All right. Is that any better? Are we coming through now? Sorry about the sound, everyone. Seems like we have to reconnect sometimes after the stream has started with this particular audio interface. And we coming through now? All right, fantastic. Hey, I appreciate you guys letting me know in the chat. You can hear my voice okay now, though? All right. Thanks, everyone, and sorry about that. I'm really not sure exactly what the configuration issue that causes that audio problem is. I'm using an Apollo Solo audio interface, so it's like a pretty high-level audio interface, and it's attached to my MacBook here. The audio, goes through just fine as I'm testing, but it seems like a lot of the time, right when I go live, something happens between the connection of that audio interface to the computer, which causes me to need to reset that connection between the audio interface and the computer, which seems to clear it up. So apologies for the first few minutes of, duck farts and robot noises coming from the mic here. And thanks for joining me today. All right. What's happening, Lisa? What's happening, Wall? We got Lifeform Music in the chat. All right. What's happening, Tony? This is going to be a really casual stream today. What I want to do is I want to go over pretty much the most basic Eurorack setup that I've put together to date for creating some really casual beats and grooves. I got a couple of more modules this week from the Blue Lantern Modules company. I'm going to switch over to the other cam and show you guys what I'm talking about here. Let me fix this overhead just a little bit. Starting off, I'm talking about this grids module here from Blue Lantern Modules. And this is an emulation or a clone rather of the mutable instruments grids module. This one is a little bit smaller in width. And it's black instead of silver. It also has a firmware in it that's a little bit different than the stock firmware that comes with the mutable instruments grids. And I believe it just has a few extra drum beats. And the other new module that really helped this come together this week is this mixer. This is the Stereo Sir Mix-a-Lot mixer from Blue Lantern Modules. And it's got 6 inputs. It's got the ability to pan those inputs. And we also have 2 effect sends. So I can send any channel that I route into this mixer to an effect send A or an effect send B, which really gives us a lot of, control over what we can do with these sounds when we're routing them into an effects processor. All right. Now I just want to take a moment before we get started to address the pink elephant in the room maybe. And that is Eurorack is such a customizable work environment that you can literally create whatever it is that you set out to create using these tools. If you want to create a really nice drum machine, the tools are there to do that. If you want to create like the be-all, end-all synthesizer with like 6 oscillators and waveform synthesis and FM synthesis, all the tools we need in Eurorack are there as well. Or maybe you want to create a techno machine that allows you to flip it on and just start banging out, endless quantity of techno beats. Those options are there as well. So the very first thing that we need to keep in mind is the end goal, is what you're actually trying to create. For instance, if you're just trying to create a really robust synthesizer, then you're not going to be interested in drum machines and drum modules. And if maybe you're trying to create the coolest, most custom effects box, you might not be having the need for drum machines and, drum modules and the like. So in this particular case, my goal is to create a box that can create drums and melodic content at the same time. And there's, an endless ways that we can create that. There's endless amount of modules. And there's pretty much an endless configuration of how we can put these modules together and how we can use these modules. So I just want to say at the beginning of the stream today that I'm not trying to say that this system here is like the best system or that these are the best modules for this type of setup or anything like that at all. What we're going to be doing today is just focusing on the actual pieces conceptually so that you can get a really good idea of what it takes to put something like this together. We're really keeping it simple today. You can see I've got a lot of empty space, in this case where we could have filled it up, completely with a lot of other modules. But I really want to talk conceptually today. And that is like, this is the basic tools that I needed to be able to put together some grooves. I've got a sequencer here to sequence some drum sounds. This allows me to sequence kick drums, snare drums, and hi-hats just from this one grids module. It has a whole bunch of drum beats built into it, basically, and they're sort of aligned to, like, let's say a grid. And I can move where we are in that grid of beats by using the X map and the Y map controls. And I can change the drum beats in real time that are coming out of this sequencer. I don't get to, sequence my own beats or tell it, specifically how the beats should play out. We're only working with the inbuilt rhythms of this module. And that makes it really easy. Now what we can do is we can customize this in real time. We can have these three knobs at the bottom control the amount of kick drum triggers that are coming out of the module. The next knob controls the amount of snare drum triggers that are coming out. And the third knob at the bottom here controls the amount of hi-hat triggers that are coming out. So we're able to get some really custom sounding beats coming out of the grids module. It's also a clock module. It has its own built-in clock, which we're using today for the master clock. You can see I don't have a whole lot of extra sequencers today. I'm not trying to get 6 golden showers, all, synced up. But what we're doing is we're syncing one other sequencer today only. I have the grids for the drums. Again, this is going to allow us to sequence 3 drum sounds, kick, snare, and hi-hat, just from the one module. We're going to connect the clock out from this module, and we're going to run that into this Synth Rotex Sequence 8 sequencer. This is going to be used today as a melodic sequencer. We've got 3 drum voices here. We've got a kick drum. This is the arcade kick module from Blue Lantern Modules. And then I've just got 2 braids modules from Blue Lantern Modules. These are the clone of the mutable instruments braids modules. I really like the Blue Lantern version. They're black on the screen, so it kind of matches, and they're a little bit thinner in HP than the actual braids module as well. Now, these have lots of different algorithms in them, and in this situation today, we're using them in a very, very simple way. We're just going to use one of these for the snare and one of these in a noise algorithm to create some hi-hat sounds. Another really neat thing about these braids oscillators is they have a built-in VCA so that you don't necessarily need an extra envelope generator when you're using these modules. Also, I just want to note that I'm really trying hard to keep this one as beginner-friendly today as possible. So if you have questions along the way, or if I'm not explaining something very clearly, please feel free to just ask those questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to go back and try to cover whatever that is in a little bit more, detail, so you guys can really understand what is happening in the system today. Let me just check in with the chat real fast. Hey, what's happening, Audible Video? All right. So, okay, let's see here. So we've got a sequencer for the drums, and this is also our clock module. So I can, choose our tempo with this module here, so we don't have to have an external clock module today. I'm using the Blue Lantern braids module for a snare, and also the noise algorithm for a hi-hat. So there's our drums. Next up here, we need a voice that we can, use for melodic content. And today we're going to be using this oscillator. It's a really simple oscillator from Blue Lantern Modules. It's their JFET VCO. And basically, this is sort of a Roland 303 emulation. It's got a square wave output and a saw wave output, and it's a really strong and beefy oscillator that really stands up to these drums that we're going to be working with today. We're going to need an envelope for this voice as well, so that if we just plug in an oscillator to our mixer, it's just going to be a sustained tone. But if we want to be able to create pump 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 ding ding kind of sounds that have amplitude and whatnot, we're going to need an envelope module. Today we're using a really simple and my favorite envelope module. This is the Javelin from WMD Devices, and we're going to get into why this is so special as I start patching this up today. Next up, we're going to need a filter in the system for sure, absolutely. Now, you could have a filter for every single voice in your system. You could run, your kick through a filter, your snare through a filter, on different kinds of filters. And, again, the list goes on and on as far as what, options there are. Today, we're going to be using one filter. We're not going to be doing any filtering on the drums. We're just going to use a filter on our melodic voice so that we've got a little bit more control over how that voice sounds. Now, you may be thinking to yourself already, Dean, there's no quantizer in this system. How are we going to stick to key? Today, we're not worrying about any of that stuff. We're not necessarily, this is such an easy setup because we only have one melodic voice today. So we're not going to need to keep this voice in key or in tune with anything else in the system because it's going to be the only melodic element today. Now, what does that mean exactly? That means that we may create some wonky sounding melodics that aren't necessarily specifically in a key, but we're going to go today with the philosophy of if it sounds good, it is good. And we're going to keep moving forward with this really, really simple system. I can plug all four of our sound sources, so our bass voice basically, our kick, our snare, and our hi-hat. I can plug those into individual channels here on the Sir Mix-a-Lot. And we can route the individual effects out into an effects processor. Today I'm using the dual effects from Erica Synths because it has two individual effects algorithms in it. So I can use the first one for, say, delay, and I can use the second one for, say, reverb. I just pressed that button and I wish I hadn't. But we'll get back to that in just a moment because I had it set exactly where I wanted it. Okay. But that's fine, we'll get through there. So what we're going to do today is we're very slowly going to patch this up and we're going to create some beats and some grooves. I'm just going to check in with the chat real fast before we actually get started with the patching. If there's any questions before I get started, putting this together, please feel free to ask those in the chat and I'll do my best to answer those. Yeah, DivKid, love DivKid. The thing is I've got his modules. I've got his mute module, and I've also got his oct module, which is H triangle wave LFOs. Really great stuff. And that's really the beauty part of like putting together systems. Is you're going to put together like some of the basic elements that you need, and then you're going to sort of fill in around those with ways that you can take all of these sounds and all of these elements to yet another level, depending on what you need and what you want to do with your sound. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. What I want to do first, let's see, is I'm going to go ahead and patch our drum sequencer into these drum modules here. And I want to use the shortest cords that I can, cables for these. We're going to go ahead and there's 3 outputs here. There's a trigger out for the kick drum. I'm going to plug that into I could probably take a shorter cable for that. Yeah. I'm going to plug this into the trigger in of this kick drum here. So I've got the trigger out for the kick drum going into the trigger in of the kick drum module. That makes sense, right? This is going to send triggers out, and they're going to trigger this kick drum. We're also going to take the accent. I'm probably using a shorter cable for this as well. We're going to take the accent out also for that kick drum. And the kick drum module that I'm using today, this arcade kick, it has an accent input. So we're, good to go there. Now, again, you don't need to be using this kick drum module. There's probably, over 100 different kick drum modules that are available in Eurorack. The key and how you select the modules that you want to work with in your system is you just watch demo videos on YouTube. You get an idea of what these individual modules sound like, and you pick the one that speaks to you sonically and aesthetically, and what, that fits into the system that you're trying to build. This isn't like, the best kick drum. I'm not sure that there is a best kick drum module. It all just sort of depends on what sounds you like. So, if you're shopping for some drum modules, take the time, and listen to a lot of different demo videos and hear, some of the modules that make sounds that speak to you and the kind of music that you want to create. There really isn't any right or wrong modules to use. Okay, so we've got the kick drum patched into the sequencer. Now we're going to need to patch that into the mixer. So I'm going to go ahead and take the output here, and I'm going to route this into channel 1 of our mixer. What I want to do also is I want to make sure that we can, hear the system. So this SUR Mix-a-Lot mixer from Blue Lantern Modules is a stereo mixer. It's got an output 1 and 2, and I'm going to go ahead and route these outputs into my main mixer. Whoops, sorry about that. And let's see, I want to check, let's see if I can get this going here. Cool. All right. Get some kick drum going there. Now I've got the grids, lighting up here and sending out a trigger signal to our kick drum. So I just want to make sure that we can hear this now. All right. It's the right speaker, and then here comes left channel. All right, we should be getting a little tiny bit of a stereo signal here, and I'll start adjusting this volume as necessary. Okay, I'm going to bring the volume up a bit. Okay. Is that coming through on the stream? Just going to adjust a couple of levels. I'm going to keep the volume relatively gentle as we get started. And let's see here. I can turn that off by turning the clock off. And I want to go ahead and start patching in the rest of these drums at this time. We're going to need to patch in the snare drum. So I'm going to take the trigger out on the grids module, and I'm going to patch that into the gate input on the snare drum. And now when this module sends out a snare trigger, it's going to trigger our snare module. We just need to plug this into the mixer now. Maybe we'll click longer cable. Click longer still. Let me grab a couple of cables from back over here. Cool. So I'm taking the output and I'm plugging that into the input on the second channel of the mixer. And let's just go ahead and get this into the mix. I'm going to go ahead and get the grids module spitting out some rhythm here. All right. All right. Now we can go ahead and start patching in this noise algorithm for hi-hats. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to patch the trigger output of the hi-hat. I'm going to need a little bit of a longer cable here. I'm going to patch the trigger output for the hi-hat into the gate input of the noise module here. And then we're going to take the output of the noise module and we're going to route that into channel 3 of our mixer. And I'm going to go ahead and start up the drum machine rhythm here. Start sending out some hi-hat triggers as well. And I'll turn the volume up on this hi-hat. So we can affect, what this noise sounds like. You can change the color on it. You can change the pitch of it. turn this off for a second. Now, I think as we get started, I think this is really a key point here, and that is we've got something sequencing some drum sounds now, and we can mess with this sequencer, and we can change the rhythms that are being sent to these drum modules. But I think it's really key in a setup like this that you can actually, tweak your drum sounds individually in real time as well. So we've got, a specific module for the kick drum, we've got a specific module for the snare drum, and we've got a specific module for the hi-hat. Again, if you go to modulargrid.net and you type in, search for hi-hat modules, you're going to get like 100 different results. And the options here are the same as I was trying to get across with the kick drum. You just take a look at the modules, you see how much size they take up. You start watching some demos on those. If you find some where the sound, coming out of those starts speaking to you, maybe you make a note, and whittle it down and whittle it down. You base your decisions on how much space you're willing to give up in the case that you're creating, and and what you need and how much customization over those sounds. But here we've got pretty interesting customization started with just like 5 modules. We've got a sequencer for the drums, we've got 3 drum modules, and we've got a mixer to route the audio from those modules into. We can tweak each of the sounds for these drums in real time. All right, what let's do next is let's get the other sequencer, the sequence 8 here, going in time with the drums and sequencing a little bit of melodic content from our bass voice today. Just going to check in with the chat real fast. How wide is the top rack? I'm actually not 100% sure of the HP on this right off the jump. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember. But if you look up it's called the Mantis case. It's the Tip Top Mantis case, if that helps at all. Okay. So let's see here. We're going to go ahead and need to get our melodic sequencer running in the same time as this sequencer here. I've already gone into the menu settings of this grids and set it up so that it's spitting out a clock and a reset signal to help keep another sequencer in time with the grids module. So we don't need extra modules for that. I can go ahead and take this clock output from grids, and I can patch that into the clock input of this other sequencer here, and I can take our reset signal, and I can patch that into the reset signal of this sequencer here as well. So I'm sending clock and reset so that our sequencer here knows like when the downbeat is, and it will stay in time no matter where I roll the tempo of grids. Now, what do I mean by roll the tempo? And why aren't we hearing anything now? Because I'm not like pressing, start and stop. How we've got grid set up is the knob in the very middle is the tempo knob. So if I roll it all the way to the left, we're getting 0 tempo, which is, basically a stop. And if I just gently start rolling this knob up, we start introducing the beat. And I'm controlling the tempo with this knob. So if I want a faster beat, I just roll the knob up. And we're going to roll it way up now. We can see here, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? That the sequencer is staying in time, and it's speeding up when I speed up the drum beat, and we can see that it's slowing down in time as I slow down the drum beat. So we've got these two sequencers in sync with each other now via the clock signal and the reset signal. And I can stop the whole beat by just turning this drum machine's tempo all the way to off. I said drum machine. It's not really a drum machine, but it sort of is. Now, again, I want to address just the grids module for a moment here. It's got quite a bit of knobs on it, What we can do is we can get some tempo going, and you'll see that, we're flashing a tempo now, and this sequencer is kind of going in relation to that tempo, but we're not hearing any sound. And why is that? It's because I've turned all 3 of the fill knobs to 0. And basically, these 3 knobs at the bottom control how much of each sound is going to be in the beat. How much kick drum. If I want a lot of kick drum, I'll turn this up more. If I want some snare, I'll turn the snare on. And the more I turn this knob, the more snare I'm going to get in the pattern. Hear how the snare is more busy now? And if I turn it to the left, we get a less busy snare. I can do the same with the hi-hat. We can turn the hi-hat on. And the more I turn this knob to the right, the more we get of the hi-hat. Just turn my volume up to the stream a little bit here. A little more volume to the stream. Now, I can change the tempo at any time, you know, by just rolling the tempo knob, which is kind of fun. As you're, you know, exploring the grooves. Some grooves work better at a higher tempo, and some grooves work better at a slower tempo. You can also do like fills and rolls, you know. All right. Now, remember earlier that I said one of the special things about these Blue Lantern modules, Braids modules, is that they have a built-in envelope so that we don't need to use a separate module to control the envelope or the length of time that these sounds play. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. I'm going to mute the kick drum by turning the knob all the way to the left so it doesn't spit out any kick triggers. And I'm going to mute the snare drum by turning its knob all the way to the left so it's not spitting out any triggers. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the tempo up so that we're just getting the hi-hat sound. Bring that up in volume as well. Now what we can do is we can go into the menu of the Braids module, all sorts of settings in the menu, but one of the settings is the decay of the sound. It's the built-in envelope. So I can have this be a really long sound, right? Crazy sound. Or I can have it be a really short sound. So we've got some adjustments over the hat here. We've got adjustments over the length of it. We've got adjustments over the pitch of it, and we've got adjustments over the timbre of it. And again, having those individual adjustments over the sounds, I think is really, really important. And we don't really get that when we're using like some of the sample modules that I've been using, because a recorded sample, you know, you can only change so much of it, typically like the pitch, you know. All right, we can do the same thing here with the snare drum. If I go into the menu and I scroll over to the decay, I can make it a long snare drum, right? Or really tight, percussive kind of snare drum. So being able to, you know, control the length and the pitch and the timbre of the snare drum is really awesome and handy as well. If we want to bring the kick drum back in now, I just roll the knob. If I want, you know, more or less kick, I roll the knob to the left or to the right. So we can really easily, with this bridge module, have those cool turnarounds and, you know, rolls per se. 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, and let's roll it now. Then we go back, you know. I can again turn that off by just messing with the tempo knob. I hope that is all making sense so far. I'm going to check in with the chat and see if there's any questions on what we've set up so far. Yeah, Audible Video, the Tip Top Mantis case is actually one of like the more, I don't know, better reviewed entry-level cases. This was the second case that I picked up when I started, you know, overfilling the very first case that I picked up, and the price was good. It is a plastic case. It's not a metal case, but it's really strong plastic is the thing. It doesn't come with a lid, so like if you're looking for a case to like take on airplanes and gig and stuff like that, it might not be the best option. But as far as just like a decent sized case that allows you to get a bunch of modules in it for a pretty low price, yeah, the Tip Top Audio Mantis case is definitely an awesome choice there for sure. Hey, what's happening, Sky? Tortoise Ferryman. What's happening, Sonic Laboratory? All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me on this stream. All right. So now that we've got our sequencer in time with our drums, and we've got our drums, set up so that we can adjust them in real time. We can change the beat, we can change the drum sounds, we can change the tempo. Actually, there's one thing I didn't actually go over on the grids module, and let me do that real fast. If I start up the beat here, let's say, we're not really happy with this beat. There's actually a whole bunch of beats that are, built in. Turn this master volume down, keep the volume up, but just a little quieter. There's actually a whole bunch of beats that are built into here. And basically inside the module, there's like a graph, right? And like each little square of this graph has a beat in it. And we can change the X point and the Y point on this graph using these knobs here. So if I roll one of these, it's going to change where in that grid of drum beats, we're at and which beat is actually playing. So if I want to change the beat up, I just scroll the grid knob here. You hear that I've completely changed the beat now, but it's still the same as it was before. I can have more or less kick drum, more or less snare drum, or more or less hi-hat by rolling these knobs. So even though I'm changing the beat, I can still kind of change how the drums are interacting with each other within that beat. Let's say I'm not happy with this beat. All I have to do is roll these X and Y knobs a little more. There, now I've changed the beat again. So depending on which beat I'm on, and depending on how much kick, how much snare, and how much hi-hat triggers I'm sending out of the beat, we can really get a lot of different rhythmic information coming out of this one sequencer. That sounds pretty cool. All right. What let's do is let's go ahead and get this melodic element happening. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to plug the CV out of the sequencer into the voltage per octave input on our oscillator. Now what this is doing is it's sending out voltage information. Each of these steps we're sending out, this is an 8-step sequencer. Each of these steps has a knob above it. The knob is controlling the amount of voltage that we are sending out of the sequencer. And then if I plug that into the pitch information of an oscillator, these knobs now correspond to each step. The knob corresponds to the pitch of this oscillator that it will play on that step. Now there's no quantizer today, which is a way that we use to keep things in key or in scale. We're just doing it the most simple way possible. So with a system like this, if someone said, hey, give me a jam in the key of C minor, well, that's going to be a little bit difficult, because we're not necessarily tuned to any specific key. But again, because we're working with just one voice today only, this little bass voice here, we're not worrying about that it's in tune with anything else. So we're keeping it really, really simple today, and we're not worrying about any type of quantization or snapping to like a scale. We get a knob at the bottom of our CV output of the sequencer, which allows us to change the voltage output from a lot of voltage to a smaller amount of voltage, so that we can still really sculpt kind of the melodic information that's coming out of this sequencer. And we're just about to get to that. Now, if I just patch this oscillator in by default, let me do that now so I can show you actually. I'm going to use the square wave output because I'm kind of a square wave guy. I'm going to patch that into the input number 4 of our mixer here. And if I turn that up now, we can hear that all we're getting is just that sustained tone, coming through. And so we want, to have an envelope that, triggers this so we can have actual melodic notes coming through. And that's where the Javelin module comes in from WMD Devices. This is my favorite envelope module. So instead of taking the output directly from our oscillator into the mixer, we're going to route it into an envelope. So we're going to take the output of that square wave and we're going to route it in to this Javelin envelope. Now this has an envelope generator, and it's also a VCA. So it's kind of a lot of things in one module, and it has some tricks up its sleeve that are really awesome that we're going to get to in just a moment. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the output of this, and we're going to route this directly into our mixer. We're going to bypass the filter for now, just so that we can start hearing this module. And if I get things going now, all right. All right, I've skipped an important step here. What we need to do is we need to send a gate signal to our envelope so that our envelope knows when it should trigger the envelope and make the sound. Now you could use a whole separate sequencer, to send that information, but we're going to do it very simply today. And there's a clock output on the sequencer that just, copies the clock input signal, which is just a 16th note signal, and it has an output for that. So I'm going to take an output here from the clock out, meaning that we're just copying the clock signal that's coming out of grids. It's going into our sequencer, and now I've got an extra copy of that clock signal. So even if I turn the clock up or down, this clock signal is going to follow along with that. I'm going to plug this into the gate input of the Javelin, which is our envelope. And now, if I get the pattern going a bit here, and I turn up the volume on the JFET VCO oscillator here, we can hear that we're starting to hear some actual, melodic information coming through. Now, let's see here. Because we are not in a specific key today, we can make this a really low bass sound. We can make this, like a synthesizer sound, like a plucked sound, anything we want to do. And we really just don't need to worry about tuning at all. If it sounds good, it is good, because we're keeping it as simple as possible with this setup. If anybody has any questions so far, just please feel free to ask those in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer those. All right. Or tag me so that I don't miss your question if it's an important question. Okay, fantastic. Let's see here. So again, we can do slow beats if I have the tempo slow, or I can roll this tempo up, right? A lot if we want to, right? And we can change the tune of this oscillator to anything we want, If it sounds good, it is good. Because we're not trying to be in key or in pitch with anything else today. Now, I can mute the drums, by just turning their knobs to the left. And I can change the sequence that's being fed into our oscillator with these 8 knobs here. And again, we're not adhering to any scale today, so there's quite a bit of possibility that when I, move these notes around, that they could be notes that sound off with each other. And I find that you just, move them around a little bit until it sounds good. Volume up a little. All right. And I can change the envelope of that sound now using the controls of our envelope. Right? We can have it be a more staccato sound. Or if I open the envelope a little, you can have it be a much bigger sound, right? Now, that sounds pretty cool and all, but we definitely want to have some more control over what we can do with our melodic voice. So we're going to run that into a filter as opposed to running just that oscillator and envelope into the mixer. We're going to route it through a filter first. And we've got the Steiner VCF filter, again, from Blue Lantern Modules here. I'm really liking this filter. I've just added this to the collection a couple of weeks ago. This one is a multi-mode filter. It's got low pass, high pass, and band pass. It also has an FM input if we want to get really jiggy with it. We're going to go ahead and patch the out of our envelope. So instead of going directly into the mixer, I'm going to use a longer cable for this. We're going to go directly into this filter. So out from the envelope. So we're going, our sequencer information directly into the oscillator. From the oscillator into an envelope, which allows us to have control, over the length of that sound and the pluckiness of that sound. And then we're going out from the envelope into the low pass filter input of this filter here so that we can process our sound with a low pass filter. I'm just going to take an out now from our filter module, and we're going to route that directly into the filter. And let's take a listen to what that sounds like. A little bit difficult to mix on headphones sometimes. All right, but can you hear how we can change the timbre of that bass sound now? If I turn the resonance up, which I love to do on this filter, we can get a little bit more chewy with it. I can adjust these drums here. Maybe pick a different beat. All right. Now, let's talk about a really, really special feature of this grids module. Again, this grids module is creating the clock for the entire patch. It's creating all three rhythms for the kick, the snare, and the hi-hat. And what we've got on here is we've got a chaos knob, which basically allows us to get a pattern going. And then if I turn the chaos knob up, it basically creates some variations in real time. So if I have a beat going, this beat isn't going to change. It's just going to play that exact beat over and over again. But if I want to add, a little bit of randomness to this beat, I just turn the chaos control up. The more I turn it up, the more amount of random that's going to add into our beat here without me having to do anything. So I find this a really neat way to kind of go back and forth between some different sections. Let's just leave that up a little bit for now so that it'll spit out a little bit of difference for us. All right, fantastic. Now, the filter still sounds a little bit plain on our bass or synth sound here. So what you can really do to bring life to a filter is to patch an envelope into it. This is one of the reasons why I love this WMD Javelin envelope, because it has an envelope generator that comes out of it as well. So every time we send that gate signal, which is basically just our clock, so it's triggering the bass on 16th notes, which is just our clock. It's triggering it on all 16th notes. If we take an envelope out from this envelope generator, what we're then getting is we're getting the shape of our envelope being put out of a separate output. And we can send the shape of that output and the trigger, so it's triggering every 16th note. We can send that to another module. And the coolest thing we can do is literally just to take that envelope shape and route it into the CV input of our filter. And what this does is it gives an envelope shape to our filter. So our filter is not just a static filter, but that it's actually really gelling and moving along in time with our envelope. And as I change the envelope and make the sound a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, that affects the filter as well. And we can really start getting some custom tones out of this voice using a filter and using an envelope into that filter. Let me show you what I mean. now, when I start going down, that we're getting a lot more of sort of movement on this. And it's a lot more acid sounding. I can bring up the resonance on it and make it a lot more acid sounding. But the key here is that as I adjust the envelope now, it's also adjusting the way the filter sounds. Right. Now it's still pretty plain sounding, but you can hear how we can start shifting some tones around now, right? We can change the melodic by just rolling these 8 notes around. Remember, we're not tuning to anything else today, so we're not worrying about being in pitch or in a specific key or a specific scale. If it sounds good, it is good. Now, again, this is starting to come together, right? We've got some beats and we've got some, melodic element, but we can't really shape the sounds any further than what, we've done so far until we start bringing in something like external effects. And that's why I'm really enjoying this stereo Sir Mix-a-Lot mixer from Blue Lantern Modules, is it has 2 different effects sends. So I can send any of the sounds that we route into it to either one of those effects sends. And we're going to go ahead and set that up at this time. Before I do that, I just want to take a moment and check in with the chat and make sure that I'm not missing any questions. Thanks for hanging out with me, everybody. I appreciate you being here. All right. All right, good deal. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up the effects send at this time. We've got 2 different effects sends in the Sir Mix-a-Lot mixer. We've got an effects send A, which I'm going to go ahead and take. And this is the only thing that's a little bit out of the ordinary and maybe more specific to me with this system. Excuse me. And that is, I've got a custom high-pass filter module here that I had made from a company called Bear Modules. So I definitely want to give a shout out to Tom over at Bear Modules who put this special high-pass filter together for me. This is taking the input that I route into it and removing any low-frequency content beneath about 600 kilohertz. And what I'm using this for is I'm using it specifically to route things into my effects sends and remove the low frequency content. For instance, if I take a kick drum and I just route that directly into a reverb, well, the kick drum has quite a bit of low and sub-frequency content. And if I route that low-frequency content into a reverb, it's going to muddy up our track really quickly and not sound very good or very tight or very punchy on speakers. And so what we want to do is we want to remove the low frequencies from ever even entering the effects chain. So I've had Tom put this together for me that removes the frequencies beneath about 600 hertz before I route that signal into the effects send. So I'm taking that and I'm going to take an output from that filter. I'm going to route that into the input 1 of our effects module. Again, this is the dual effects from Erica Synths, and I'm using that one today because it works really well in this setup. It has two individual algorithms, and we have two individual effect sends, so that kind of just works out for us. I'm going to take our second effect send, our send B, and I'm going to route that into the second input of my high-pass module. These are just individual inputs so that I can route multiple things through the module. I'm going to route the output of this into the input number 2 of the effects module. So I've got send into this high pass, and then our other send into this high pass, and then both of those are going into the dual effects. So no matter what I route to the effects processor, and this is really important, no low frequencies go through these effects. And that's one of the things that's going to keep the jam, in a minute a little bit more clean. And that, I can full on send the kick drum to delay or to reverb without a whole lot of worry that it's going to muddy up the bottom of the mix and confuse those frequencies down there. What we need to do now is we need to route the effects back into our mixer. And this is a stereo effects module, and this is a stereo mixer. I've taken mono sends out of the mixer because the effects module only has a mono input, but each of the effects output has two outputs, a left and a right. So we're going to go ahead and take the left and right outputs of effect A, and we're going to route those back into our mixer. Here's A, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to need a longer cable, and we're going to do the same thing. Whoops. Come on. All right, cool. We're going to do the same thing with the second effect send. We're going to send the out left back into the B input left, and the out right back into the B input right. And what I've essentially done now is I've connected the effects to the mixer so that any of these sounds, if I turn up the A or the B, we're going to get reverb, delay or reverb. Although I do think I'm going to need to switch this back. I think I accidentally swapped the button earlier. See if I can locate that card, but maybe. Is it one of these? Yeah, it is one of these. All right, cool. The dual effects from Erica Synths comes with like a little business card that breaks down what the algorithms are and how to get to them. And what I want to be on is that reverb. So I'm just going to switch this back. Okay, I believe that was the setting that I was on when we started today. I'll find out in just a moment. All right, let's go ahead and get some audio going here. All right, so if we've got everything hooked up correctly, I should be able to go ahead and just start sending our sounds to this effect. Right? Cool. So I've got a delay here, and what we can do is we can adjust the time on that. So that we've got a nice rolling delay, or that we've got that tight, trippy melodic sound. Robotic sound, rather. When you get that delay really short, I really like what that does to the sound in this system. So I can start adding this sort of robotic effect to these drums and making them a lot bigger. I hope I'm not distorting anyone's speakers. Let's route the kick to that effect. All right, you see how I'm completely changing the way that these drums sound now? Let's send that snare drum to the reverb, right? Again, you can hear that I can really sculpt what these are doing, right? You can send the kick drum through that reverb without worry that it's going to get muddy, because I'm removing the low frequency content. I can start really shaping these drums, right? I hope that's not exploding anyone's speakers. If I bring in the melodic element now, hear just how much we can really start shaping this sound, right? All right, so what I'm going to do now that we've got everything connected, is I'm just going to jam a bit with this system. I'll check in with the chat first and, see if there's any specific questions. But we've got everything connected now, so I can just literally play with the notes and the sequencer. I can play with the filter and how that's affecting our, one melodic sound. And I can play with the drums in real time. I can start messing around with the rhythm, the tempo, rather, of the pattern as I mess around with different drum beats. And I mess around with different sequencer patterns. I'm going to check in with I've also got some notes here that I want to remember to, do as I'm, sort of messing with this system today. All right. I'm not sure what that means. Ed, does it sound bad? Do I need to gain stage, or are you asking about gain stage? We started from scratch today, so I didn't really have a reference on the volume. But I think we're doing okay. Am I exploding anyone's phone? I haven't used the Squarp Pyramid, but I do have the Squarp Rample 4-slot sample player. I've been getting on pretty well with that. A little bit of extra from that. Okay, cool deal. So I'm going to go ahead and just jam with the system a little bit, and let's see what kind of, what I want you to listen for specifically here is just the range of sounds and beats and grooves that I can get out of this tiny little system just by messing with the sounds themselves, the beat, and the way that the effects are being routed. Let's have a little bit of fun. Let's jam this out. I'm going to start a little slow here. All right. Let's bring some of these effects down, tame it a little bit. Yeah. Cool. All right. Actually, before we do that, let me take a moment and show you guys some of the special things about this Javelin envelope. I'm going to get the beat going here. You've got, actually it's a little loud, so let me turn this down here. Really love how I can affect the tempo, using grids just a little slower, a little faster, maybe a lot slower, a lot faster. Super cool. Okay, so I've got these controls over the envelope here, and basically I can change the size of the envelope. So like if it's hitting a nice pluck sound, I can make it hit a really short pluck sound by changing the way that the envelope size is with this envelope range button here. So here how it's really tight now. Right? Now if I change the range of the envelope, we've gotten a little bit bigger, right? And I can go one bigger. So let me scroll through those again. So can you hear how I'm able to really change the way that this sound, is using just the range of the envelope here? Make it bigger. Make it bigger again. And now we'll make it small again. Okay. I typically like it in the middle setting here. I've also got another button on the left side of this envelope This is for the level of the envelope, and it does sort of a similar thing. Check this out. Do you hear how we've just changed the filter there? I'm going to press the level button again here. This is affecting the filter because I've got the envelope out of the module going into the CV input of our filter. So it really affects the way that the filter sounds as we change our envelope. Right? Let's get a faster tempo here. Again, I can turn any of the drum sounds off by just scrolling that sound all the way to the left. So if I just want to have like some kick drum here. I really like how the sequencers are just completely in time. So whatever you want to do, everything just kind of follows along. All right. I'm going to just check in with the chat for a minute and see if there's any questions. I hope you guys are just, able to understand just how simple we've put together, what we've put together is, rather. We're not worrying about a whole lot of VCAs. We don't have a whole lot of, different voices that we're trying to get in sync with each other. We just have two very simple sequencers, one sequencer only for the drums and one sequencer only for the melodics. And as long as we can sculpt those sounds in real time, it's surprising to me. Like, I'm not trying to use this as a live performance box, but just as a really interesting way to break apart the concepts that we need to actually, put together beats and grooves in the Eurorack format. All right. Snare too loud. Yeah, sometimes it's very difficult on the headphones. Sorry about that. Take the kick out and drop in. What's happening, Rustic? Hey, what's happening, Mobile Music Pro? How you doing today, Vortex? All right, I'm going to go ahead and let's take all of the sends down so that it's just the clean sounds again. All of the sends down on all four of our sounds. Again, we're only working with just 4 sounds today. We've got the kick, the snare, the hat, and the bass. So it can't really get much more simple than that. These are the most basic elements that we can use to put together beats and grooves. Let me just randomly change the beat that's coming out of the module by changing the X and the Y, on the little grid of the different beat. I'm not sure how many beats exactly in total are in this module, but the way that we can interact with it, spits out so many different combinations of those beats that it's really, really been fun to play with so far. Changing up the delay here so we get a different feel to the sound. And let's mess with the sequence 8. If I roll all of the notes to their here. All right, if we roll all of the notes here to their far left position, maybe arbitrarily pick a root note there. Cool. And now let's turn the volume up on that a little bit and give it a little bit of effect. All right, just a really, simple gated 8th notes sequence here. But just like that, just move a few of those notes and we've got kind of a techno sounding groove. right. Let's see here. I just want to take a moment and take a look at the notes that I wrote down for things that I wanted to, be sure to check out that the system would be capable of. Use the note. Oh, right. Cool. Let's check that out. There's a neat feature in the Sequence 8 sequencer from Synth here, where if I flick a knob, it changes the pattern from being a static pattern where it's going sequentially to a random pattern where it's just playing those notes in the sequence randomly. Let's check that out. We turn some of these effect synths down to get us into a much cleaner state of a groove here. Cool. All right. So if I put the random switch on, it changes, to a much more, just that random melodic pattern. And then if I turn it off, I can go back to our sequence. If I want to, reset the sequencer on my own, I can do that by just hitting the reset button. 3, 4, 1, and 3, and 1, and 3. I don't know if you guys can see that we're, on sync with the downbeat there. But I really like that feature, being able to take our, sequence that's very static and then make it more random. And then go back. And then random again. I've already shown this once, but I just want to go over it one more time as well because I think it's really powerful. And that is the way to use sort of this delay in the mix. And what we can do is we can turn this delay up on like our hi-hat sound, and we can have that, long type of delay, or we can really close it down, to where we're getting more of a metallic type of sound coming out. And I really love the way you can shape the sounds with this. We can add the reverb. I can have that be short reverb or long reverb. But it just changes the timbre of the hi-hat so much when you send it to that sort of flangey delay. Really like what you can do with that. All right. Okay, let's try this as well. One of the neat things also about the Sequence 8 is it doesn't just have one set of CV outputs. It actually has 3 sets of CV outputs that's going to send this note information out, this voltage information out. So we could do some like rhythmic, interesting modulation perhaps if we take the second CV out here. And what we could do would be to maybe, try routing this to the FM inputs on our oscillator and maybe see what that does to our sound. Let's get this going here. You bring some of these drums down. All right. Fantastic. What let's do is bring that, where is that? The FM. That gives us kind of an interesting little, not really what I'm after there. Let's try if we put the modulation into the pulse width modulation input. Now we can hear that it's affecting the pulse width modulation of our square wave quite a bit. So if we bring in the other sounds. and we're getting a little bit more modulation on our lead sound. I think I actually prefer it without that though. But that's really a neat thing of the Sequence 8 as well, is that you can send these other bits of CV to other, destinations. For example, what if we were to remove our envelope from the filter and instead use that second CV output and run that into the filter? What sort of effect does that have on our lead sound? Now it's sort of, moving this filter cutoff knob rhythmically. Again, I still think I prefer how we had it originally, which was just with the envelope controlling the filter. Yeah, much more that way. But that is definitely a neat feature from the Sequence 8, that we've got those extra outputs that we can, route to other things in the case for modulation. I could route that, for example, to the pitch of the hi-hat or the pitch of the snare drum, for example. Okay, cool deal. Well, I've gone over the system and I've pretty much explained what I wanted to explain today, how we can put something together to jam and groove with just, these simple modules here. All we're using is just trigger signals today. That's all we're using. It's a very, very simple system. And what we would do is we would, as we're working with a system like this, we might, say, well, I'd like to have a ride cymbal to bring in, or I'd like to have a shaker to bring in, or I'd like to have the ability to like change patterns in a certain way. Those are the things that, you're going to pick modules specifically to those, features that you're lacking when you start putting together a system like this. Plenty of room to add lots more modules and lots more different custom things. But as far as the basics, we've got a kick drum, a snare drum, a hi-hat, and a melodic voice that we can blend with those. We've got an effects sounds rather, that we can blend with any of those so that we can really shape the timbre. We've got a filter on that lead synth so we can really affect the timbre of that as well. I'm going to check in with the chat, but I think we're going to get ready to wrap it up today. If you've got any questions, now would be a fantastic time. And again, thanks for hanging out with me today, everybody. I appreciate you being here. All right. I believe you can automate the chaos knob, and that is a fantastic question. Let me change the camera here. You can actually, on the grids module, you've got quite a bit of modulation that you can put in. You can actually, there's an input, a CV patch input for each of these knobs here. So if you've got like an external, LFO module or something, you can have these knobs actually moving in real time. I prefer my drum beats to be a little bit more static than that, so we didn't explore that today. But I love the chaos knob for adding a little bit of variation to the beat that I've got. Again, you can have full chaos with a lot of variation, or no chaos and it's just, this standard beat. But we have a CV input for the chaos knob as well. So you could, separately turn this on and off without you having to use, your hands to do it as well. We've also got a CV input over the clock control. So you could even have the entire tempo of your patch, moving up and down for, through some external modulation. I'm not sure, how that would sound, but it's something that's doable as well, for sure. Early days techno vibe. Yeah, right on. Yes, I am going to. That's a great question. So, Sky Tortoise Ferryman, and thank you for asking. Yeah, this is just a bonus stream. I was messing around with this, system for the first time a couple of nights ago, and I realized just how straightforward and easy it was to put something together where I'm actually able to, jam with it in real time and get all sorts of different sounding grooves out of it. And I really wanted to share that with you guys. But this Sunday, we're definitely, so 2 days from now, we're definitely going to be live again. And what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to continue working on the happy sounding track that we built up in the Akai Force, not this last weekend, but the weekend before that. Sometimes actually most times I find that on this channel, I'm doing a lot of building from scratch, and on most channels, they're doing a lot of building from scratch. But I find personally that the journey in making a track, from starting to actually finishing a track is kind of a progressive journey in the difficulty scale, and that it gets harder and harder and harder, to keep making a track and working on a track and finish a track. Starting something from scratch is really, really easy, and we do that pretty much every week here. But I'm going to continue working on that particular track and see if I can't get it a little bit closer to a finished state. And we're going to continue that sort of uphill journey this weekend with that one. So definitely tune in for that. I don't typically make, like happy sounding, tracks. I typically make like, dub techno and drum and bass and stuff like that. So I thought that might be a specifically good one to continue pushing forward on, since it's not necessarily my typical style. So yeah, for sure. On Sunday, 10 a.m., we're going to be working with the Akai Force, you guys. Again, so if there's any last minute questions at all about anything we did today, or music production in general, now would be a great time, because we are going to go ahead and start wrapping it up today. Yeah, you're very much welcome for the bonus. Yeah, building to finish, right? Exactly. The thing that I can't typically do that stuff live is, like I've said before, I typically spend about 15 to 20 hours, give or take a few hours, working on a track. I don't know, these YouTubers who like say they're, putting a finished track together and then they stream for 2 hours. I'm not sure that I would consider a track that I've only spent 2 hours on, like a finished track that I want to, give out to the world. You really want to put the hours in and like polish things, the best you can. I mean, if you're like the $6 million man and you can work better, stronger, and faster, maybe you can get, quality work done in 2 hours. But I mean, I'm going as fast as I can, and it's taking me, 15 to 20 hours typically to finish a track. So we're probably not going to finish this track in the Akai Force on Sunday, but hopefully we'll at least get it to a more finished state. Cool deal. All right, let's see if we can get this going here. All right, cool deal. This is such a fun little system to play with, and I really just wanted to share this and how easy it is to get going, and that we don't need to get really super complicated with the Eurorack just to have a good time. All right, fantastic. So again, I just want to say I appreciate everybody hanging out with me on these experimental streams where we mess around with the gear. We're definitely going to be back on Sunday, and we're going to be messing with the Akai Force and continuing to work on that happy track that we started a couple of weekends ago. It's going to take one more second if anyone has any last minute questions. All right, cool deal. Fantastic. All right, so until next time, thanks for watching. Take care of each other, everyone. Bye bye. Cool.